Okay, this is the final part of uh, the three-part videos, and I'm going to focus on question number three. So, question number three is asking me to explain the concept of time value in investment appraisal, and this is related to capital budgeting. Uh, so, what is capital budgeting? Uh, Capital budgeting is related to, or like it's used to, rather, to describe how managers plan significant investments in projects that have long-term implications. For example, if a company is uh, thinking of buying new equipment, or if the company uh, is thinking of introducing new product lines, these decisions or uh, these new projects that the company is thinking of undergoing have uh, long-term uh, implications for the firm. So these kinds of decisions are what we call uh, capital budgeting. So some applications of this capital budgeting are also used in finance, for example, in financial modeling and stuff. So let's continue to typical capital budgeting decisions. For example, I've already stated buying new equipment and introducing new product lines. So let's add a few more uh, typical decisions that fall under capital budgeting. For example, a firm might take cost reduction measures. These cost reduction measures might come in the form of acquiring new equipment, uh, acquiring new uh, equipment to limit or like that helps to reduce costs. So new equipment that reduces cost. So this is a capital budgeting decision, or the company might make a decision, an expansion decision. An expansion decision is uh, deciding if you want to buy a new plant, in like expanding warehouse or the facility and stuff like that. Or does the company want to lease uh, or buy? There are many capital budgeting decisions that managers undertake uh, in an organization. So any decision that involves cash outlay now, or like cash outflow now, to obtain future return is a capital budgeting decision. So any any decision any decision that involves cash outlay now in hopes of future cash inflows is a capital budgeting decision. The reason why I started with capital budgeting is because the time value is related to capital budgeting. So we have to kind of understand the concept behind time value, which is capital budgeting, before moving into capital budgeting. Now, capital budgeting decisions usually fall into two categories. The first one is screening decisions. Screening decisions. As we understand from the name, this is the decision whereby we assess uh, a project, or we assess a proposed project based on already existing criteria. For example, the criteria might be if this project is going to give us a 5% return next year, we're going to take it. If not, any project that's going to be uh, like any proposed project that's going to be undertaken by management will have to give an initial rate of return of 5%. that is a criteria that needs to be met because it's a policy. So the screening decisions are related to company policies. That means the decisions, I mean rather the proposed uh, projects, in order to be acceptable, need to be in line with the company policy. As an example, if a company says, I need a project needs to give me a return of 5% or 10% within 2 years or within a year, that is a policy, a company policy, and that's companies use their policies to screen prospective or proposed uh, projects, and this is the screening decision. And after different proposals, proposed projects or uh, prospect projects pass the screening stage or the screening decision, they fall into the preference decisions. Preference, sorry, preference decision. Uh, Decisions. Now this is selecting from multiple acceptable projects. Now there is an assumption here. The assumption is multiple projects have passed the screening stage. Maybe we may have just screened one policy, I mean one project proposal, and it may have passed. But in this case, in the preference decision, uh, there need to be more acceptable projects to choose from. So this also is basically the two ways, or the two ways in which capital budgeting decisions, uh, the two different types of capital budgeting decisions. Uh, now, now that we have talked about that, there are four capital budgeting methods. Uh, for There are four capital budgeting methods, and these are uh, payback period, net present value, IRR, and incremental net operating income. So these four are the four capital budgeting methods. Now that we've talked about this, these three out of the four, these three are concerned with cash flows. They're concerned with cash flows and cash outflows. Which ones? Payback period, net present value, and IRR. So now let's go into the time value of money. From the name, the time value of money, we kind of get the sense that money has value that is determined by time. Uh, so, what does this mean? It really means that capital budgeting, I mean, rather, any capital budgeting decision should not always be about cash flows. It should not always be about cash flows. Any capital budgeting decision that the company undertakes should not always be about cash flows. That's what we understand from the time value of money. There are times where it is just about cash inflows. For example, in the payback period, that might be the case. And there are some projects that new startup companies and new startup projects they're kind of in dire need to get uh, cash flows for their investment or returns on their investments sooner. So for them, the time value of money doesn't really matter, but usually in terms of capital budgeting and when managers make decisions, uh, the cash flow is not the only thing that matters, but the time value of money matters. So, what's the idea behind this? So, in simple terms, let's say somebody gives me $1,000 now uh, towards that is to be saved or invested towards saved in a bank or invested uh, towards retirement. Towards retirement. So that person can give me the money now, $1,000 now, or they can give me $1,000 a year from now to be saved slash invested towards retirement. Now, the idea behind it is we're not even going to take inflation and interest rates and stuff like that into account. We're just going to look at the money at its face value. We're just going to look at the money and say, if I get money, the $1,000 now, then I'm going to invest it or save it, right? And the person that's giving me the money is so that I invest it or save it towards retirement. But if I get the money a year from now, again, we're not taking anything else into account. We're just taking the time and the money. So if we save it next year, and if it's saved towards retirement or if it's saved or invested towards retirement, I will have more money if I save or invest the $1,000 now. So the time value of money states that a dollar today, time value of money states that money today is better than money next year. So money today is better than money next year. That's what the time value uh, of money recognizes or states, or in simple or in layman terms. Uh, because of this, investments that offer earlier cash flows are preferable uh, than uh, investments that promise later cash flows. Are better than uh, investments return later on. Now, I think I didn't clarify properly here. The payback period is the time we get our initial investment back. So it's really not about cash flow. It's about it's about cash flow. It's really not concerned with the time value of cash flow. But here, this part is focused. The time value uh, of money states that investments that promise earlier cash flows are better than investments that return later on. So from the four budgeting capital budgeting methods that I mentioned, from the four capital budgeting methods mentioned above, IRR and NPV. From the four capital budgeting methods mentioned above, we mentioned that three of them, payback period, net present value, and IRR, are focused with cash flows. And from these three, we're going to take IRR and NPV and try to understand what they are. These two focus these two also focus on time value of money. These two, the IRR and the NPV, focus on the time value of money apart from cash flows, and they focus on the way we know how they focus on this is because they use something called a discounted cash flows to determine the present value of future investment. That means future investment return. So what they basically do is there's an investment and it promises to give back some amount of return in the future. So what they're going to do is they're going to discount that value in the future to present value, and they're gonna compare the present value of the future investment return to what they're required to invest. Why is that important? Because we cannot compare apples with oranges. Like we cannot compare the future with the present. So we have to bring the future value, turn it into the present value in order to compare it. So discounted cash flows is used by IRR and NPV, net present value. But payback, as I said, payback period only cares about when the initial investment will be paid back. Will be paid back. So that's what payback period only cares about. So this is pretty much my presentation about time value of money. Thank you for listening. This is the final part of the videos. My name is Karim Mulbita, and yeah, the end.